Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are swinging straight into the surprisingly complex world of the Tee Legion TCG.
Yeah, it's that brilliant system, isn't it? High fantasy duels, but all governed by, well, golf fundamentals. Grip, stance, tempo.
Exactly. Knights, dragons, relics. But the real action, you could say, happens on the fairway. It's quite the mix.
It really is. And that integration, the golf metaphor driving the TCG mechanics, that's what makes it so compelling, I think.
Totally agree. So today we've got a pretty clear mission. We want to cut through some of the noise and really master the two relic subclasses that feel the most, well, physical. Gear and swing.
Right. The equipment and the technique. Gear is your clubs, swing is your form, your stance.
And our goal is basically to dissect how these two subclasses mess with the core dragon stats. We're talking yards, hit damage, and dragon guard.
YDS, HD, and DG.
Yep. The idea is to give you, the listener, that deep mechanical understanding. You need to know why these things work the way they do to really optimize your bag, your strategy. Absolutely. So if you're listening and you need to know the difference between, say, grabbing a specialist wedge relic versus just tweaking your stance with a swing relic, well, this deep dive is for you. It's your manual.
We're trying to look beyond just the numbers on the card, right? We're asking why the designers put these constraints in place. What kind of strategic doors does that open up?
Exactly. But first things first. We kind of have to set the stage, establish the ground rules. Let's quickly unpack the core mechanics so everyone's on the same page.
Good idea. So the game really revolves around two key roles, right? You've got the knight.
The golfer avatar.
Pretty much. They're the command center, sitting back in the teeing ground. They manage the overall game points, the GP. That's your health, basically.
And they give one order per turn.
1 of 3, yeah. Strike, defend, or activate. They're the strategists. Crucially, they're not usually the one doing the hitting. That's not their main job.
Right. They only jump into combat if things get really desperate, like a last resort.
Exactly. The dragons are the firepower. They're the golf balls, in a way. They line up in the lance zone.
They're the ones executing the strikes, taking the risks, facing the hazards.
Which is why their stats are what most relics are designed to modify. That's the immediate focus.
Okay, so let's talk stats. There are 4 core ones, but really 3 that relics mess with directly.
Right. First, you've got GP, game points. That's the knight's health, like we said.
Player score, yeah. Then the combat trinity, HD, hit damage, that's your raw offense. DG, dragon guard, that's your defense, your stability, how well you soak up damage, and the really unique one, YDS, yards, the positional anchor.
Yeah, yards it's kind of the mechanical heartbeat of Tee Legion, isn't it? It dictates the dragon's whole identity, really, and where it sits in the lance zone slot.
And this isn't just flavor text, it's a hard rule tied to the golf club idea. Tell us a bit more about how those YDS cans work. They create limits, right?
Huge limits. The designers built the lance zone with specific slots, and each slot demands a certain YDS range, just like picking a club. So the putter slot, that's pivot, it's for dragons with 0 to 50 YDS.
Tiny range.
Very short game. Then maybe a sand wedge, SW, might be, say, 80 to 120 YDS. A 7-iron slot, 7i, that's locked to dragons that have 180 to 200 YDS printed on them.
Right.
And then the big guns, the driver slot, D or 1W, you need 280 plus YDS to even sit there. So every dragon starts with this fixed identity linked to its yardage.
Okay, I get the starting positions, but here's where it gets a bit tricky for me, and where relics obviously come in. If YDS dictates the slot, why is it also a stat that relics can change? Doesn't messing with YDS mid-combat just break the whole positional thing? That's the clever bit. It's all about the constraints. Relics can modify a dragon's YDS maybe during a strike roll effect, but here's the key. The dragon's actual physical position in the lance zone does not change. It stays put. Even if its YDS stat is now totally wrong for that slot.
Stays put. And that leads to this really elegant but sometimes brutal penalty. If a relic bumps up or drops a dragon's YDS, so it's now outside the legal range for its current slot, that dragon immediately enters a non-striking status. It's basically paralyzed.
Whoa, okay. Give us an example, like walk me through that.
Sure, let's say you have a solid 7-iron dragon. Printed stat is 190 YDS, perfect for the 7i slot, which needs 180, 200 YDS.
Okay, standard mid-range dragon.
Right. Now you play a powerful gear relic, maybe it's called, I don't know, Distance Maximizer Shaft.
Yeah.
And it gives you plus 50 YDS and plus 100 HD for this turn. You're going for more power, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
So your dragon's YDS jumps from 190 to 240 for that moment. But 240 YDS is way outside the legal 180-200 band for the 7i slot it's sitting in.
So what happens? Does it like magically slide over to the 4 hybrid slot that covers 240?
Nope. That's the critical point. It stays right there in the 7i slot, but because its calculated YDS is now illegal for that spot, boom, paralyzed. It cannot execute the strike command you just gave it until the effect wears off, or maybe you play another relic that brings its YDS back down into that 180-200 sweet spot.
Wow. Okay, that's a huge deal. The designers really wanted to enforce slot discipline.
Absolutely. They didn't want players turning, a short game specialist into a long-range sniper temporarily without any kind of real consequence. You have to maintain that alignment between the dragon's nature and its position, or your own gear backfires on you.
That completely changes how you look at YDS buffs then. A massive YDS boost might seem great for hitting something far away, but if it pushes your dragon out of its zone, you've basically just given yourself a penalty stroke, immediate immobility.
Exactly. It confirms that position is just intrinsically tied to the dragon's base identity, and it makes Relic fine-tuning this delicate dance of micro-adjustments, not just wild swings in power.
Okay, that sets the stage nicely.
Yeah.
Let's move to the relics themselves, the arsenal.
Right. So if dragons are kind of like the clubs making contact and knights are the golfers, relics are everything else in the bag plus maybe some advice. They're the ongoing supports. They sit in the relic zone.
Unless they're technique instants, those are different.
Right, good point. Techniques are one-shots, but most relics are persistent effects in the relic zone. They shape the shot, they bolster the defense, they manage the tempo, but they never, ever execute a strike themselves. They're influencers, not actors.
They're the indirect influence.
So,
And they're defined by their subclass, which dictates their mechanical focus. We have 5 main types, right? And the rules about which stats they can touch, that seems absolutely central to their flavor. Totally central. Let's run through them quickly, focusing on our main 2 today. First, gear clubs. Like we said, these are focused purely on the physical output. YDS, HD, and sometimes DG. They are the instruments themselves, got it. Then swing, form stance. This is about stability consistency. You said primarily anchored by DG.
yeah, DG is the big one for swing. It also modulates YDS, but more subtly than gear. And crucially, it can have a little influence on the knight's GP tied to discipline.
Interesting. Okay, what are the other 3?
You've got course field, relics. These represent the environment. Think weather, ground conditions. They primarily mess with GP tempo, affecting stamina, score, maybe over time.
The technique, instant. You mentioned these, the one-shot tactical plays.
Exactly. Big bursts of HD or YDS, often for a specific situation. But they usually cost you something, maybe a GP penalty, like taking a risky shot.
Like a penalty stroke, yeah. And finally, caddy, guidance.
Right. These manage the psychological side, the variance. They tend to be DG and GP anchors. Think of them as providing a safety net, maybe boosting the knight's morale or focus.
Okay, 5 distinct roles.
Okay.
Now, you mentioned a crucial design constraint separating gear from the others related to GP.
Yes. This is fundamental to understanding the designer's intent with the golf metaphor. Gear relics, representing the physical clubs, shafts, balls, whatever, do not touch GP. Period. They cannot grant GP recovery. They cannot inflict GP damage directly.
Okay, I have to push back on that a little. Why draw such a hard line? If I, as the knight, get this amazing, brand new, custom-fitted driver relic, isn't there a natural morale boost? A psychological edge? Why couldn't gear grant maybe just +1 GP sometimes?
It's a fair question. It comes down to abstraction and focus, I think.
Yeah.
The designers decided GP represents the knight's personal state, their physical stamina, their mental fortitude, the score itself. Equipment, however good, is external.
So a better club makes the shot better, not the golfer fundamentally tougher or calmer.
Exactly. It improves HD, it improves YDS, maybe DG if it's about control, but it doesn't directly change the golfer's focus or endurance in the game's terms. That psychological and physical element, that's reserved for the other 4 subclasses.
Swing, caddy, course, technique.
Right.
Those represent non-physical factors.
Mm-hmm.
Internal discipline, swing, external guidance, caddy, environment, course, or tactical decisions technique. If gear started messing with GP, that clear flavored distinction between the physical tool and the mental or environmental state would just dissolve.
Yeah.
Okay, that clarifies it. It's about mechanical purpose reinforcing the flavor. Gear has to stay surgical, focused only on the output of the strike. While swing and caddy handle the knight's stability and the dragon's non-offensive stats more, that constraint actually elevates the design, doesn't it? It stops it from just being a messy stat buffet.
Absolutely. Role separation is key.
All right, let's dig deep into gear then. The clubs.
Okay. Gear relics. They embody the tools of precision and power. They govern the physical output of the strike. And when you look at their stat anchors, the priorities, you see this hierarchy that's built strictly around what a golf club actually does.
So the primary anchor's got to be YDS yards, right? A club's main job is controlling distance.
Without a doubt. Whether it's a driver relic trying to max out carry distance, or a wedge relic demanding pinpoint accuracy near the green, Gear's fundamental purpose is spatial. It dictates where that dragon strike is intended to land.
And how does that show up on the cards typically? Those are just flat bonuses?
Sometimes flat bonuses, yeah. But more often, it's conditional YDS modifiers based on the dragon's lance zone slot. So like a hybrid rescue club gear relic might say something like, if the dragon currently holding this is in a 3H, 4H, or 5H slot, increase its YDS threshold by +10 and grant +75 HD. It's specialized for that kind of club's job.
Hyper specialized, yeah. Okay, so YDS is primary. What's the secondary anchor?
That would be HD, hit damage. This is the kinetic energy transfer. You translate that distance potential on the club type into raw impact power. It wouldn't feel right if a high YDS gear relic didn't also boost HD significantly. It'd feel like a soft lob, not a proper strike.
So they usually go hand in hand.
Generally, yes,
Okay.
especially for the power clubs. Think about a really high tier, maybe risky gear relic. Let's call it the Rage Driver head.
Sounds like Slice Fang territory.
Oh,
Totally. Its texts might read, +200 HD and +50 YDS. But if the shot shape roll is anything other than a 1 straight or 2 draw, the dragon suffers Mannequin 150 DG. See? Massive offensive potential, tied directly to the physical anchors, but with a big risk. It feels like a tool pushing the physical limits. Okay, YDS first, HD second. What about DG, Dragon Guard? You mentioned it's tertiary, used rarely. When does a piece of gear grant defense?
It happens when the gear represents equipment specifically designed for control over raw distance. Usually things like high lofted wedges or maybe specialty irons for getting out of trouble like bunkers.
So you're trading power for precision.
Essentially, yes. When you play a gear relic that's heavily weighted towards DG, you're functionally sacrificing some of that YDS and HD potential in exchange for better shot shaping and control. Imagine a deep sand wedge relic. It might grant a hefty +150 DG, but it also applies maybe a -75 YDS modifier to the dragon's base stat.
So the DG boost represents the club getting the ball out cleanly, maybe preventing it from flying way over the green, but it comes at the cost of distance.
Exactly. It's a clear trade-off focused on the output. You want defensive gear. You sacrifice gear's defining trait, raw distance and power, and just to hammer it home again, gear never touches GP.
Never.
And those 4 stat mixes, YDS plus HD plus DG plus GP, completely banned for gear.
Completely banned. Even the 3 stat combos, YDS plus HD plus DG, they exist, but they're usually reserved for very rare, quite situational relics. Gear is kept laser focused on output.
Okay, so in terms of gameplay role, gear relics are the ultimate swing shapers, but specifically by amplifying the results of a swing.
That's a good way to put it. They take the basic statistical outcomes of whatever strike, roll, or effect is happening, and they push those numbers further in the direction the club is designed for. More power, more distance, or in rare cases, more control via DG, but always affecting the raw output numbers.
And the faction contrast you mentioned earlier really highlights this. Iron Resolve versus Slice Fang. How did they use gear differently? Okay, so Iron Resolve, they're all about defensive tempo, reliability, so their gear relics reflect that. They focus on smaller, steadier adjustments, mostly YDS and DG. A typical Iron Resolve gear card might just offer like +25 YDS, +50 DG.
It's enough to nudge things.
Exactly. Nudge the dragon towards the safer high end of its lance zone slot for stability without risking that YDS paralysis penalty we talked about. They value equipment that gives a small, repeatable edge. Consistency over flash.
Whereas Slice Fang, they want chaos.
They absolutely want volatile output. Slice Finger relics are all about massive upside, but with potentially catastrophic downsides. Their relics might give huge YDS and HD swings, +150 HD, +100 YDS, but only if you roll a perfect draw, maybe. And maybe they inflict another 100 DG penalty regardless of the roll, just because the equipment itself is inherently unstable or hard to handle.
So they use their clubs to gamble. It reflects their whole philosophy. Precisely. Pushing the limits of the physical strike. So, gear relics are strategically flexible tools. They can be reliable micro-adjusters or reckless power spikers, but they're always tied to that physical output trinity, YDS, HD, DG. Okay, that makes perfect sense for gear. Now let's switch gears, pardon the pun, to swing relics, if gear's the physical tool. Swing is the execution. Exactly, swing relics represent the abstract part. The golfer's technique, their form, their rhythm, We're shifting from external hardware to, well, internal software maybe. I like that analogy.
Cool.
Internal software. So how does their mechanical focus reflect that? Stability over offense, you said.
Yeah, generally, when you look at their stat anchors, stability and consistency are definitely prioritized.
Okay, so the primary anchor for swing relics, you said it's DG, Dragon Guard. Why DG? Why not HD? If I've got really great form, shouldn't my hits be harder, more damaging?
Ah, see, that's the key philosophical choice the designers made here. In golf, what does great form really give you? It's repeatability, it's control, it's reducing unwanted variation, like hooks and slices.
Okay, so it's more about avoiding mistakes.
Exactly. It's the best defense against mishits, against leaving yourself vulnerable. So in game terms, better swing form means tighter control, fewer defensive leaks when you stroke. That makes DG the most authentic anchor stat for swing. It's about efficiency and control, which translates directly to resilience, DG.
Rather than raw, potentially unstable power, which is HD.
Precisely. Swing aims to minimize the chance of the opponent capitalizing on your strike. It ensures the dragon maintains its composure, its structure during the action.
Okay, DG is primary. What's the secondary anchor then?
That's YDS yards, because technique does affect carry distance, right?
Yeah.
A well-compressed iron shot flies further and straighter, but swing relics modify YDS much less explosively than gear relics do.
It's not about bombing it down the fairway.
No, swing YDS mods are more about distance control, distance shaping. Making sure the shot lands accurately within the zone you intended, rather than just raw power maximization like a gear driver might give you. Okay, DG primary, YDS secondary. And here's the big difference from gear, the GP connection. Swing relics can touch the knight's game points. Why? How does discipline and rhythm give access to the knight's stamina resource? Because swing relics represent the knight's own mental and physical commitment to executing good form. Maintaining that disciplined stance, that repeatable rhythm, it helps the knight stay composed, especially under pressure.
So it links the dragon's execution back to the knight's state.
Exactly. It allows swing relics to provide subtle GP mitigation, maybe preventing GP loss from certain effects, or, much more rarely, a tiny bit of GP recovery. It reflects the idea that good technique helps sustain the knight's composure through the round.
Can you give an example of how that GP mitigation might work strategically? Sure. Think about those annoying fatigue effects some cards have. Maybe next to 1 GP to your knight if your dragon strikes well damaged. A well-designed swing relic, let's call it the Zen stance, might have text like, as long as this relic is active, when your dragon strikes, if a game effect would cause you to lose GP, mitigate 1 GP of that loss. So it doesn't heal you, it just stops the bleeding caused by stress or sloppy play.
Precisely. It reflects the advantage of staying disciplined. It's a brilliant way to justify letting swing touch GP. It's mitigating the mental drain, not magically restoring health like a potion.
Love that. Okay, so the stat combination rules for swing must reinforce this stability focus too, right? Absolutely. The most authentic common pairings you'll see are just DG on its own. DG plus YDS for control, or DG plus GP for composure and resilience. And there's an almost universal rule. Swing relics avoid pure HD spikes. If a relic gives a big chunk of hit damage, it's got to be gear or maybe technique.
Almost certainly. Swing is designed as the consistency engine, the stabilizer. It's not the power amplifier, that's Gear's job. So, wrapping up Swing's role, they are the form stabilizers. You play them to manage variance, ensure repeatable performance, especially when things get dicey. Right. They make bad rolls on things like the shot shape roll less punishing, and they make good rolls maybe a bit more efficient, perhaps by adding DG. They really lean into consistency and resilience. It's like that old golf saying, drive for show, putt for dough. Except here, it's maybe gear for show, swing for consistency, something like that. It reflects the idea that a golfer with solid fundamentals, good rhythm, good mechanics, will often outperform someone just relying on fancy, expensive equipment, especially over the long haul. Swing relics are the resilience engine in a Tee Legion deck. So bringing back the factions. Slice Fang might lean on their exclusive gear for big HD numbers, while Iron Resolve relies heavily on their swing relics to make sure that even if their strike isn't perfect, it still carries enough DG to keep them safe on the opponent's turn. It's measured aggression versus reckless power, embodied in their relic choices. Okay, we've defined gear as output tools and swing as form stabilizers. Now let's get into how they actually interact at the heart of the game. the shot shape roll, the SSR, right? The SSR, this is where the golf swing itself, the draw, fade, hook, slice gets translated to direct mechanical effects. And a crucial point, the SSR doesn't happen on every strike.
Ooh, when does it happen then?
It only occurs when a relic, usually a gear or a swing relic you've activated, specifically tells you to make one as part of its effect. So it separates like just a basic distance calculation from a specialized swing style you're trying to impart using that relic.
Okay, so it's an instructed roll, not automatic.
Yeah.
And it determines the quality of the strike. Exactly.
Cool.
It's a single 1d6 roll, and the outcome dictates the trajectory, the power, the control, and ultimately the strategic impact of the gear or swing relic you just used. And the curve is simple. Low is good, high is bad, 1 is best, 6 is disaster. All right, let's walk through the 6 outcomes. What's a 1? Straight.
Perfect strike, right down the middle of the fairway, metaphorically. Your baseline stats apply, but hitting a 1 often triggers the best bonus effect listed on the relic that called for the roll. Maybe a big DG spike, maybe extra HD. It represents pure, clean execution. Okay, best case. What's 2? Draw. Controlled power. It favors impact. Mechanically, the standard draw result is plus 100 HD and plus 50 YDS. This is obviously great for aggressive decks like Slice Fang. You're translating technique directly into more damage and a bit more forward position, more offense. Then 3, Fade, controlled control. It favors safety. The standard Fade gives plus 100 DG and plus 50 YDS. This is the stable, reliable shot. For a defensive deck like Iron Resolve, this might actually be the most valuable outcome.
Wait, why? They both give plus 50 YDS. Why would you prefer DG over HD?
It depends entirely on your game plan and the board state. If your main goal is to knock down the opponent's GP quickly, yeah, you want that draw as plus 100 HD, maximize damage. But what if your dragon is already a bit damaged? Or what if your opponent has a powerful dragon ready to counterattack immediately?
Then the defense matters more.
Exactly. If you know you can't afford to leave your dragon exposed after the strike, actively seeking that Fade's plus 100 DG bonus is crucial. It shores up your defense immediately after striking. You sacrifice some potential damage for resilience. It's offense versus protection on the follow-through. Makes sense.
Yeah, totally. It's about risk tolerance.
Okay.
Okay, now for the bad outcomes. 4. Hook. The overswing. You tried too hard for power or distance and lost control. Mechanically, it often gives a huge distance spike, maybe plus 150 YDS, which could be good or bad depending on the YDS paralysis rule. Right.
But it comes with a harsh penalty, usually a negative 100 DG, leaving you wide open. And importantly, a hook carries a direct risk of landing you in a bunker hazard if you miss the target zone. Ouch. Okay, 5. Slice. Weak contact, just poor execution. This is almost always purely negative output, typically negative 100 YDS, so you fall short, and negative 100 HD, so the strike is weak. Plus, it immediately maps to risking the rough hazard, just an inefficient bad hit. And the absolute worst, 6. Shank. Utter catastrophe. Think hitting the hosel of the club. You get a massive Magus 150 YDS reduction, which almost guarantees you'll violate your slot's YDS ban and become paralyzed.
If you even hit the ball forward.
Right, and on top of that, you must make a separate hazard check. This is where things get really scary. Depending on that check, your dragon could end up in a water hazard, or even worse, out of bounds, OB.
Which is game over for that dragon.
Game over for that dragon, yeah. So now we can see clearly how Gear and Swing interact with these SSR outcomes.
Gear shapes the numbers.
Right. Gear relics modify the raw numbers associated with the outcome. A Slice Fang gear relic might say, if the SSR result is a 2, draw, the HD bonus from draw is increased by an additional plus 150. It makes the good outcome better, or maybe makes the bad outcome worse, but it doesn't usually change the odds of rolling that outcome.
Okay. It amplifies the result, whereas swing.
Swing relics manipulate the outcome itself or mitigate its effects. They don't usually boost the raw numbers as dramatically as gear, but they increase your consistency. A swing relic might let you reroll a 4, hook, or a 5 slice once per turn. Or it might say something like, treat all results of 3, fade, as if they were 2, draw, if your dragon's current HD is over 200.
So it's like technique overriding raw chance or guiding the shot.
Exactly. It reflects using better form to avoid the worst results or turn a decent result into a more desirable one based on the situation.
This dynamic really makes deck building interesting, doesn't it? If you load up on gear, you're accepting the raw variants of the SSR, hoping those amplified numbers pay off big when you hit the right roll.
But you risk bigger penalties on bad rolls.
Right. But if you lean on swing, you accept maybe a lower maximum power output.
In exchange for smoothing out that variance. Knowing your technique, your swing relics will help stabilize the roll and prevent disaster more often. Gear defines the potential power curve of the shot. Swing manages your consistency on that curve.
Okay, that's the primary role during a strike. The relics have another huge job, right?
Hmm.
Getting you out of trouble. Hazard retrieval.
Absolutely crucial secondary role. When your dragon ends up in a bunker, the rough, or even a water hazard after a bad roll or opponent effect, you generally need a relic effect to attempt a retrieval.
But let's just state the absolute rule again for emphasis.
Out of bounds, OB is final. If your dragon goes OB, usually from a Shanks hazard check, it is gone. Removed from the game entirely. No relic, no effect can bring it back. It's the ultimate penalty.
Okay, so for the retrievable hazards, bunker, rough, water, how do relics work?
They follow strict rules. First, most retrieval relics are par-gated, meaning they can only attempt to retrieve dragons up to a certain inherent par value. Like, a common retrieval relic might only work on par 3 or par 4 dragons. You can't reliably save your massive par 5 boss dragon with just standard equipment or basic form adjustments. The game assumes those huge dragons are just too unwieldy to easily recover from a major error.
Okay, par-gated. What happens when you activate one?
You attempt a retrieval, and then, crucially, you often have to make another shot shape roll, 1 to 6. This SSR determines how well the recovery shot goes. Did you punch it out cleanly back onto the fairway, maybe a straight or fade result? Or did you chunk it, leave it in the hazard, or even make things worse, a slice or shank result?
So the recovery itself has variants. Let's break it down by subclass again. Gear hazard retrieval. This feels like using the right tool for the job, right? A wedge from the sand.
Exactly. It's recovery through tools. Think precision wedges, heavy irons designed for punching out of thick rough.
And the flavor consistency holds. Gear focuses on output stats.
Yes. Gear retrieval relics must focus their effects on YDS and HD trade-offs for the recovery shot. How far did you get it out, and how much power does the subsequent strike have? It completely avoids touching GP.
Example.
Okay, a heavy lofted wedge gear relic. It might let you retrieve a par 4 dragon from a bunker, but its SSR results are modified for recovery. Maybe a draw 2 only provides plus 50 HD, less power from the sand, but a hook 4 result now applies a negation 100 YDS penalty, representing catching too much sand and barely getting it out. It's a powerful but potentially erratic recovery strike.
And again, usually capped at par 3 or par 4 dragons, the tool alone has its limits against the biggest mistakes.
Right. Now compare that to swing hazard retrieval. This is recovery through form and stance.
So adjusting your posture, maybe choking down on the club shaft in your mind, relying on rhythm and control to get out safely.
Exactly. And the stat focus immediately shifts back to DG and YDS. Better form prioritizes stabilizing the recovery attempt. Control over power.
So a swing recovery relic.
Let's call it controlled chip. It might allow par 4 retrieval from the rough, but its SSR results are focused on DG. A fade 3 result might grant an immediate plus 100 DG bonus to the retrieved dragon, making it safer against a counterattack, even if the recovery shot itself didn't travel very far. Low YDS bonus.
Safety first. And does the GP connection still apply here?
It can, subtly. Since swing represents discipline, a successful recovery using good form might reflect positively on the knight's composure. So, a controlled chip might also grant the knight plus 1 GP if the SSR for the recovery is, say, a straight 1 or a fade 3, a little morale boost for executing the escape well.
Okay, the contrast is really clear now. Gear retrieval is about using the tool to optimize the strike out of trouble, focusing on HD-YDS trade-offs.
Right, getting the ball out with the right instrument, prioritizing the physical result.
While swing retrieval is about using form to optimize the safety of the recovery, focusing on DG-YDS GP.
Exactly. Getting the ball out, using the right technique, prioritizing stability, and minimizing further risk. Both are vital, but they give you fundamentally different benefits for the dragon's state after it's recovered.
Which means a player relying on swing for recovery will generally leave their dragon in a safer, more resilient position than someone who just blasts it out with an aggressive gear recovery relic.
That's generally true, yes. It reinforces their core identities perfectly.
Okay, this has been incredibly insightful. Let's try to wrap this up and pull out the key takeaways. Sounds good. I think this deep dive really confirms just how meticulous the Tee Legion designers were in making that golf metaphor stick through mechanical constraints. The absolute critical difference for you, the listener, to remember is this. Gear equals the strike output, HD and YDS primarily. It's the pure physical capability of the club, and it strictly avoids the knight's personal resource, GP. And swing equals the form stability, DG primarily, with YDS control and that subtle GP connection. It's the mental and physical discipline of the golfer, focused on consistency, resilience, and variance mitigation. Understanding that core difference, those constraints, is really the foundation for smart deck building in Tee Legion. When you look at a new relic card, the first question you should ask yourself is, What job do I need done right now? Do I need raw, amplified output, even if it risks positional problems or defensive weakness? That's gear. Or do I need consistent performance, better defense, ways to mitigate bad luck or recover safely? That's swing.
Are you building an aggressive weapon relying on brute force? Or a stable recovery engine that wins through endurance?
And the core lesson, I think, is that every single one of these constraints has a strategic purpose behind it. Gear can't touch GP because equipment doesn't grant morale in this system. Swing avoids huge HD spikes because good technique is about control, not just raw, potentially wild power.
These rules, these constraints, they force you to think carefully about how you combine these subclasses. You likely need both gear and swing working together to create a truly balanced and effective strategy. You can't just rely on one.
Absolutely. Which brings us back to the game's central idea, really.
Yeah.
Well, you might have this incredibly powerful dragon, right? Huge printed YDS stat, looks terrifying sitting in that driver slot in the land zone. Its potential threat level is immense, but that raw power is inherently unstable on its own.
It needs guidance.
It needs guidance. It's the Gear and Swing Relics. You pair it with the specific tools you give it, the form you impose on its strike, that truly determine if that dragon lands a clean, devastating hit, or if it completely mishits and collapses into a hazard, wasting all that potential.
So, okay, here's our final provocative thought for you to chew on. In a game that seems to be all about these mythic, powerful dragons,
Yeah.
the strategic reality might actually be that the perfection of the knight's swing, meaning how well you combine disciplined form from swing relics with precisely tuned equipment from gear relics, is ultimately more decisive than the dragon's raw printed stats.
Ooh, I like that. A dragon is only as powerful, or perhaps as effective, as the hands, the technique guiding its strike.
A profound thought indeed. Mastery isn't just having the biggest dragon, it's having the discipline of the right instruments to make it perform. Okay, that feels like a good place to wrap this deep dive.